Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1121. Is that thing really painful? Mei Shuayan continued in a soft voice. We've gone through so much with Mo Xia. So would we not know what kind of person he is? He may seem like a vicious and evil person on the surface, but he is extremely genuine to the people around him. Especially those whom he has already acknowledged and accepted, he could be said to treat them extremely well. If Miao Xiao Miao refuses to accept the truth and continues to trouble him like this, it would definitely affect Mo Xia's heart. So, while this method may seem overboard or even cruel, even unreasonable, we still have to do it. We must do it. Because Mo Xia does not only have us right now, he also has hundreds of millions of life in Tianfa and the evil Monarch Manor to look after. Nothing must be allowed to happen to him. Even if it's the tiniest flaw in his heart, is enough to cause everything to collapse. We cannot be careless. Mei Shuayan continued slowly. Right now, the real problem is that this last Miao Xiao Miao's temper is too stubborn. This has to do with her family background and her experiences. Her life had always been smooth sailing, with very few troubles. The only difficulty she had met so far the unexpected Mo Jun Xie in her life. In addition, she is a perfectionist who constantly seeks to fulfill the ideal in her mind. In her eyes, only the things that are flawless are truly good. And because of that, she cannot accept nor condone any lies or imperfections in her relationship. Dropping onto the reality onto her and making her come to terms with it quickly is the most important thing right now instead. Otherwise, if she continued creating a din like this for a long time and Mo Xia truly becomes annoyed, then there will be no way to save the situation anymore. Even if Miao Xiao Miao wants to turn back, she won't be able to. I was trying to help her by saying that, naturally, everything still depends on how Miao Xiao Miao thinks. But in the worst-case scenario, rather than letting Mo Xia be the bad guy, I will do it in his stead. Guan Qinghan also slowly nodded her head. Elder sister Shuayan is right, looks like it'll be another troublesome matter for elder sister this time. It was Mo Xia who created the trouble, but elder sister has to clean up after him. This is truly. Mei Shuayan swept her hair behind her ear and smiled lightly. This small action was filled with a breathtaking beauty that caused even Guan Qinghan to be completely stunned. All of us are already his woman now, so it's only natural that we consider these things for him. He'd already done so much for us, so how can we not help him share his burdens? Previously, I spent so much effort to raise the strengths of all the sisters, precisely so that we could lend him a helping hand in the future. Even if we cannot be of help, we must at least not become a burden. Qinghan, apart from me, you are the eldest among all the sisters. I hope that you can help me watch them and take care of them. After all, how can it be so easy to be Jun Mo Xia's women? Mei Shuayan said in a gentle voice. And I've finally understood elder sister's efforts today. When the time is appropriate, I will tell the other girls about this as well and help them to improve their strengths further. As elder sister said, how can it be so easy to be Jun Mo Xia's woman? Guan Qinghan nodded. And, Qinghan, I still have some matters to ask you. Mei Shuayan asked in a low voice as she walked. Her voice suddenly became extremely soft, and she looked around furtively in a shy manner. What is it? Elder sister, please ask away. Guan Qinghan was still filled with admiration for Mei Shuayan and did not notice her odd behavior. The only thing she did not understand was what kinds of matter Mei Shuayan was interested in. To need to ask her. I wanted to ask. I heard that a woman's first time will be very painful. Mei Shuiyan's face was red as she stammered. Qing Han, you've already done that, with Xie. So, what does it feel like? How much does it hurt? Also, Guan Qing Han's ears instantly turned red, and she couldn't speak at all. How would she have expected that the graceful and elegant Mei Shuiyan would suddenly ask her this kind of question? With a hoarse voice, she croaked, "Elder Sister Mei, what are you saying? Ah, I didn't hear anything. We're all family here and good sisters as well." Mei Shuiyan linked her arms around Guan Qing Han's arm and whispered directly into her ear. "Just tell me about it. What's the big deal about it? Besides, that last meow xiao meow is already one step before us. And among us sisters, you are the only one who had done that thing with that baddie before. I don't mind you laughing at me, but sometimes, even I admire you somewhat. Guan Qing Han's face was so red that it looked as if blood was about to start spouting from her skin. Looking around sneakily, she whispered back, "Elder sister, you also knew that back then, that fellow had been under the effects of medication, and he did it for an entire night. I almost died because of it. So how would I remember how it felt like? Elder sister still said that you admire me." Guan Qing Han was not lying. Among most girls, her first time was likely the most cruel and dangerous one, where she had truly almost lost her life. After that ordeal, she had been in extreme pain for half a month. So how would she remember any other feeling? That's true as well. I remember that day when Xiao Yi drugged Mo Xia. Qian Sun and I were sitting atop a tree and we saw you entering the tent with our own eyes. After that, you were taken by that little fellow, and we truly didn't seem to see anything strange." Mei Shuiyan had not finished speaking, but Guan Qing Han was so embarrassed that she could not speak. The words that she just heard had given her a huge shock, as if the sky had fallen apart. You and Qian Sun had been sitting outside on a tree and watching at that time? That's right. We saw everything clearly. That little fellow was as wild as a ferocious beast. No, even a ferocious beast is not as crazed as him. Mei Shuiyan nodded and looked at Guan Qing Han in a teasing manner. And that was a really intense scene. Guan Qing Han made a strange sound in her throat and covered her face as she dug her feet into the ground. She originally thought that apart from Jun Moxie, no one else had witnessed the scene. Even Jun Moxie had not managed to remember anything because he was drugged. So in the end, this secret was only held by her alone. But never in her wildest dreams would she have expected that such a shameful scene had been witnessed by two people from start to end. And those two people were even her close sisters now. This was too embarrassing. She wouldn't have the face to see anyone now. Guan Qing Han crouched onto the ground, refusing to raise her head. Cackling lightly, Mei Shuiyan asked, "Why? Are you shy? What? You still dare to ask so much?" Guan Qing Han was both embarrassed and angry. Jumping up suddenly, she charged at Mei Shuiyan with all her might, her face red and her breath heavy. Mei Shuiyan yelped and turned around to flee. There weren't any bearings of an expert on these two anymore now. The two supreme beauties ran and chased, passing through numerous halls in the blink of an eye. As they turned a corner, a person suddenly came into view in front of them. Who else was this if not Jun Moxie? "The two of you, what are you doing?" Young Master Jun asked in a mystified manner. What was this situation before his eyes? Guan Qing Han was chasing Mei Shuiyan? My God! What is happening? These two were the most stable among all the girls with him. What happened to them today? Also, with Mei Shuaiyan's strength, she could defeat Guan Qinghan with a single puff of air. But right now, Mei Shuaiyan seemed to be begging for mercy, and Guan Qinghan was chasing her relentlessly. Young Master Jun was completely lost, unable to make heads or tails of the situation. As she looked up and saw that it was Jun Moxie blocking the path, she shrieked aloud. For some reason, her face was as red as a flame, and lowering her head, she disappeared like a gust of wind. From the looks of it, she was running randomly without a sense of direction in her panic. That single glance she threw Jun Moxie was filled with all kinds of meanings, causing Jun Moxie's heart to suddenly blaze with fire, nearly making his nose start bleeding. What was Qing Han thinking for her eyes to be filled with such an enchanting, soul-seducing look? Should I make a stealthy trip tonight? Jun Moxie's eyes turned somewhat green as he began to plot in his heart. What's wrong with Qing Han? Young Master Jun looked at Mei Shuaiyan carefully as he asked in a confused manner. What's a man like you asking so much about a girl's problem? Why are you so nosy? From the looks of it, Mei Shuaiyan was also somewhat embarrassed. Snorting lightly, she lectured him harshly and also disappeared with a whoosh sound. Ah, what the feck? These two girls couldn't be discussing something X-rated, right? Perhaps they were thinking about this young master. So it seems that this young master's market is still pretty good. Young Master Jun rubbed his chin as an evil glint flashed in his eyes. Chuckling sneakily, all kinds of thoughts appeared in his mind. One had to say, this fellow's intuition was very accurate. By the way, don't go and disturb Miao Xiao Miao for the time being. Let her think things through by herself for a moment. When she's done, everything will naturally fall into place. Remember, haste makes waste. From the distance, Mei Shuaiyan poked her head out from around a corner and transmitted her voice. The words haste makes waste instantly doused the rising flames in Jun Moxie's heart, and he immediately sank back into a troubled state. Sighing heavily, he turned around and left. The moon hung high above in the cloudless sky and its silver rays enveloped the entire Tianfa forest, blending into the slightly misty air. From a distance, it looked like a scene right out of a fantasy world. Miao Xiao Miao stood alone at the window, looking silently up at the huge moon in the sky, her heart filled with thoughts that even she didn't understand. After knowing that this was Jun Moxie's room, for some reason, she had not resisted or asked to move out, remaining only in this strange state of mind. Apart from the almost imperceptible sounds of light snoring ringing out from all over the manor, the night was nearly completely quiet. The winds were blowing softly, and the clouds were few and drifted along lazily. The bright moon hung high in the sky, casting its soft rays upon the world. The ancient trees of Tianfa stood stably and the little branches swayed gently in the wind, without letting out any sounds. This was a truly beautiful and quiet night. But Miao Xiao Miao's heart was as turbulent as a fierce ocean, rising wave after wave. Before the rampart in her heart could be rebuilt, it was destroyed by the waves again. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1122. Comprehension. Breakthrough. Jun Yi. Miao Xiao Miao called out lightly. Her tears had already drowned those two brilliant eyes long ago. She had already formed the habit of calling out this name whenever she felt happy, sad, or lost. It was as if this name would let her calm down for some reason, settling her heart. However, This time, those two same words had lost their previous effects. In fact, she felt like her heart had become even more messy. The night was deep, and even the brilliant moon seemed to have paled a little. Miao Xiao Miao remained standing silently at the window for a long time, not moving at all. This is Jun Moxie's room. So if I'm staying here, where will he go? Would he be spending the night in the room of one of those pretty elder sisters? With that thought, Miao Xiao Miao found to her surprise that a sense of jealousy had risen in her heart. He is Mo Jun Yi, he is Jun Yi. Why? Why? She lamented bitter. At the same time, she had not noticed that she'd referred to Mei Shuiyan, Guan Qinghan, and the rest as those pretty elder sisters. All of a sudden, a soft howl rang out from the wind as an almost ethereal feeling of something that had perfectly blended into the heavens and earth swept past. Miao Xiao Miao's heart shook, and she looked towards that direction in an almost subconscious way. Jun Moxie's room naturally had the best view in the entire evil monarch manor. It was also the most spacious room. From here, a full 10,000 li of Tianfa could be seen. Following that, Miao Xiao Miao's eyes grew wide to the extreme. Far off in the forest, a white shadow rose slowly and gracefully into the sky. The ascent of this shadow was smooth, as if it were stepping on invisible steps. Jun Moxie. What is he doing? Miao Xiao Miao's heart shook and she looked over. Jun Moxie was actually feeling extremely depressed in his heart. To him, this matter before him was something that he'd never experienced even in both his lives. So the moment dinner was finished, he'd run off alone. Young Master Jun went into the depths of Tianfa forest alone, chose a large tree, and leapt onto it. Finding a large branch, he lay down, using his arm as a pillow. After that, he closed his eyes tightly. This was the method he'd used to calm and relax himself in his past life, and it always worked very well for him. But tonight, Jun Moxie discovered that this method was not working. He could not quiet his heart no matter what, and the longer he stayed in that deep silence, the more noise his heart made. Frustrated, he opened his eyes and looked up at the gentle moonlight flowing down from the sky like a river. Laughing bitterly, he said, "You are still the best. No matter where I go, I can always look up and see you. No matter which world I'm in, you still remain there, worryless, quiet and indifferent. In the blink of an eye, the oceans have already passed away and turned into fields of mulberry. Even if the entire world changes, you are still the same. What worries can the moonlight know?" Cool, silvery rays landed gently on his body. Cold as always, gentle and graceful as always. As he watched the moon from afar, Jun Moxie breathed out heavily and suddenly fell silent. In that moment, he thought of those words that he'd said a moment ago. No matter which world I'm in, you still remain there, worryless, quiet and indifferent. In the blink of an eye, the oceans have already passed away and turned into fields of mulberry. Even if the entire world changes, you are still the same. In that moment, Jun Moxie seemed to have comprehended something. That sudden flash of comprehension caused him to suddenly go from a state of extreme frustration to a supernatural state where his heart was as still as a pool of water. It was a transformation from extreme chaos to extreme stillness. A transformation of two extreme states that opposed one another. The most extreme contrast. And this transformation had not even taken 1 second. However, this transformation had given Jun Moxie a nearly supernatural switch. At this time, it was like a huge dam in his heart had shattered like a mirror, turning into powder. No more obstructions. Jun Moxie's mind instantly soared into the dark sky, traveling without limit. A breakthrough. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune and the Hongjun Pagoda had once again broken through. At the point when Jun Moxie was the most distressed, it had suddenly come. In the instant Jun Moxie's body floated up, he finally unleashed a long howl. When Jun Moxie's heart sank into that state of extreme emptiness, he immediately comprehended many things. Or rather, many words and meanings flooded into his heart in that instant. Understand the mind and finding the true self. My heart is the heavens and earth. Born in the realms of heaven and earth. Heaven and earth is in my heart. Heaven and earth is like my heart. And my heart is like the heaven and earth. All matter, all life, all doctrines, all states, are up to the heart. That is all it is. With a single will, the winds will rise and thunders fall. With a single will, all life can be decimated. My heart is the heavens and earth. And so my body is all of creation. The mountains and rivers may remain still. But when I move, the mountains and rivers will overturn. Heaven and earth may be ancient. But if I perish, the heaven and earth shall perish with me. One liang can contend against 10.000 gene. And softness at its extremities is also hard without compare. One able force can subdue 10 opponents. And hardness at its extremities is also soft without compare. What is hard? What is soft? If I say it's hard, it shall be hard. And if I say it's soft, it shall be soft. 1,000 li of land and water are free for me to traverse. Yin-yang and the universe are within my control. Who shall be called heroes? It belongs only to me. Jun Moxie's body was still in his original lying position as he rose slowly into the air. His arms maintained the same position behind his head as a pillow. In that awkward position, he rose slowly into the air, far above the tallest tree. Although the momentum was slow, there were no deviations. At this moment, all the worries and thoughts in Jun Moxie's heart had already disappeared. There were only a clarity in his mind, and his spirit was completely transparent. He was like a carp swimming freely through the sky, whether it was standing in the void, raising his hand or kicking with his feet. Nothing obstructed the will in his heart. Even though he was suspended in midair, it was as if he were standing on solid ground, and he could do any actions he wanted without any difference. There was truly no difference. Ha ha ha. Jun Moxie laughed aloud, his spirit and body completely free. Flipping around and doing a handstand in the air, he suddenly shot upwards like a rocket. His sleeves fluttered gently in the wind, and he soared above the clouds. Tall as the skies are, only I stand firmly upon it. Looking down upon the rivers and mountains, glancing disdainfully at all living things. Yes, he had broken through again, and it was a breakthrough in all areas. It was not just the Hongjun Pagoda and the art of unlocking heaven's fortune breaking through at the same time. But Jun Moxie's cultivation had also taken a large and profound step forward. The original Jun Moxie was known for guaranteeing a kill with every single strike, and every move he made was with the intention to claim his enemy's life. This was supposedly the most effective assassination technique, because the most perfect defense is a perfect attack. But anything in its extreme form is easily broken. There are flaws in an all-out attack, since if the all-out attack is stopped, only death awaits. The enemy would never give him the chance to try again. His defense was simply not sufficient. Attacking may be the best defense, but if the attack failed, the most perfect opening would also appear. And once that opening was created, it would naturally expose the most lethal weakness. Having a strong attack and weak defense had always been where Jun Moxie's greatest weakness lay. Jun Moxie himself was also very clear about that, and he'd also thought about improving on that as well. However, he'd never managed to do so. The concept of attacking as the best defense had already been deeply ingrained into his spirit. A habit that spanned 2 lives had already merged into all of his battle techniques. How could it be that easy to change? But this time, this gentle and all-encompassing moonlight had caused Jun Moxie to suddenly get a flash of inspiration. Hardness and softness was the complete fusion in the truest sense. Complete integration and transparent. Softness was a kind of strength, and hardness was also a kind of strength. Soft can become hard, and hard can also be soft. This was a concept very similar to Taiji. But unlike Taiji, which was born of the infinite and everlasting, it mainly emphasized on using softness to counter hardness, borrowing strength to strike against strength. What Moxie had comprehended was that hardness and softness were the same thing, not apart from each other. At this moment, Jun Moxie thoroughly forgot everything outside, forgetting where he was at the moment, forgetting all the things between heaven and earth. He only felt endless joy in his heart, and he wanted to display the martial Tao that he had just comprehended to show the joy in his heart. With a step of his foot, he made a series of strange postures in midair. He slowly raised his hands, supple like spring water, but the hands that were raised up suddenly stretched out towards the side in seemingly random ways. With a single move, he'd already struck out tens of times. If anyone with profound cultivation could see this scene, they would definitely not be able to believe their eyes. They would think that young Master Jun was displaying some magic tricks, to actually be able to execute such high difficulty movements in midair. Because in the eyes of others, young Master Jun had only raised his hands softly. But in the next instant, it was as if he'd turned into 1,000 hands guanyin. Each action was soft to the extreme, and no one would feel that those strikes contained any power. But in actuality, each move was filled with incredible strength. Sliding his foot out, his shoulders moved along as his waist and body swayed along with the wind. Each movement could be seen clearly, but they all left behind a series of afterimages. Each afterimage made the same movement and remained in the sky for a long time, not having any signs of dissipating. As Jun Moxie's movements became faster and faster, the afterimages in the air became denser and more compact, covering the entire sky. At first, it was only about 3 zhang wide. Then it gradually expanded to tens of zhang, hundreds of zhang, thousands of zhang, until finally, the entire sky was filled with Jun Moxie's shadow, forming into a huge patch of cloud. And from the start to the end, not a single afterimage had dissipated. Such a phenomenon was truly akin to magic. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1123. Who shall be called a hero? At this time, Miao Xiao Miao, who had been looking out from Jun Moxie's bedroom window, could scarcely believe her eyes. Just what kind of abilities was this evil monarch displaying? Was this something that was humanly possible? Looking at Jun Moxie strutting through the air free as a fish, Miao Xiao Miao actually felt a sense of calm in her heart. Somehow, this strange and astonishing sight was able to bring her a sense of quiet peace. By now, the number of people who were looking at this shocking sight was no longer limited to just a few. Behind every window, and even on the ground, countless experts were looking up at the sky with a blank face, as if they were comprehending something. A sweet and loving smile spread across Mei Shuayan's face as she looked at the freely dancing figure in the sky. Among all the people present, she was the one who understood Jun Moxie's strength the most. So only she could truly tell just how huge this new breakthrough was for Jun Moxie. If the Jun Moxie from before was an unyielding sword, he had now morphed into a formless sword. It was still as sharp and strong, but its edge did not weaken. It was instead even more dangerous. However, no one would be able to see that since his edge was extremely hidden. What was the strongest enemy in the world? What was the most terrifying enemy in the world? It was the enemy that one did not know of. An enemy that had no form. How do you deal with an enemy that you cannot see and do not know of? To his enemies, the current Jun Moxie was exactly an opponent that could not be seen. This was different from hiding in the Hongjun Pagoda or using the yin-yang escape to conceal himself. It was a unique ability that belonged only to himself. Solitary Eagle. Feng Wan Yun and the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer soldiers were all looking out of their windows in a daze. Apart from the comprehension in their minds, their eyes were filled with deep respect and worship. It was like how one revered a tall mountain. What Jun Moxie was displaying now was an extremely profound realm. This kind of supernatural realm was something that not even 1 out of 100 Saint Venerable experts would necessarily be able to comprehend. In fact, as long as one managed to comprehend even just a tiny portion of this realm, they would be able to surpass most people and look down disdainfully at the world. And Jun Moxie had not just comprehended a tiny portion, he had clearly achieved a full understanding of it. Miao Zhan, Miao Dao and Miao Jian, these 3 Saint Venerables looked at each other, their faces filled with a strange expression. Miao Zhan tried to replicate the movements with his cultivation, but just when he had just seen through one of the movements, he realized that the entire sky was already covered with Jun Moxie's afterimage, slowly building into a 1.000.000 strong army. 1.000.000 afterimages. Each afterimage was displaying a different profound comprehension. And each afterimage was hiding an intricate conception. Miao Dao and Miao Jian were similarly intoxicated. Although they still could not understand the movements completely right now, they knew that this was a 1 in a million opportunity. If they missed it this time, they might not have the chance to encounter something like this in their lives ever again. And that would be the greatest regret of their lives. So they were all watching with full concentration, memorizing with all their might. If could memorize one more move, it was a huge gain. At this moment, they no longer attempted to comprehend anything, only to try to forcefully memorize as much as possible. At the same time, the same thought appeared in all of their hearts. After we return, we must persuade the Manor Lord to establish a good relationship with Jun Moxie. Even if it's a little embarrassing to make use of a marriage alliance to do that, we must still do our best to befriend the evil Monarch Manor. Even if doing that means becoming enemies with the 3 Holy Lands. The gains were greater than the losses. Because Jun Moxie's speed of growth was simply too terrifying. Even a real free and natural physique genius would not be able to progress like that. Especially Miao Zhan, he clearly remembered that just a day before, Jun Moxie's strength was only comparable to them even though he was also a Saint Venerable. He was only around Miao Dao and Miao Jian's level and was even slightly weaker than himself. But in just the span of a single night, he had reached a realm that was impossible for them to understand, a height that they could only gaze upwards at. And that was even a breakthrough in his comprehension. It wasn't something that could be attained just by an increase in cultivation strength. A breakthrough in comprehension was an upgrade in the quality of the state. An expert might only have one instance of epiphany in his life, and it would be enough for that expert to rise far above the crowd. If he was lucky enough to have a second epiphany, it wouldn't be a dream to become a legendary figure. To have 3 instances of epiphany would make a person completely without rival in the world. This was something that was set apart from talent, resources, cultivation level, or battle prowess. One needed luck as well. And Jun Moxie had clearly managed to gain inspiration due to a moment of luck. This reason was exactly why the 3 Saint Venerables had made their decision so swiftly. Which expert didn't go into a long period of seclusion to digest their spark of inspiration or epiphany before slowly building upon it over time? Who could be like Jun Moxie, killing people due to rage in the afternoon, then gaining an epiphany in the evening? What kind of speed was that? And what kind of luck was that? Could it be that getting rejected and having your heart broken can bring about an epiphany? If so, why couldn't our hearts be broken more often? The experts of the 3 Holy Lands were only filled with shock as they looked at the afterimages in the sky. That was the evil monarch. And that was the true strength of the evil monarch. This kind of power was incredibly terrifying. Judging by the current strength that Jun Moxie was displaying right now, even the concentrated attacks of a few peak-level Saint Venerables would not necessarily be able to defeat him. In fact, there was even a high chance of them being completely wiped out. Jun Moxie, so you are actually this powerful. After the war for seizing the heavens, their 2 sides still had to have their deciding battle. But faced with this kind of power, how were they even supposed to fight? The result that they had predicted earlier, the destruction of the evil monarch manor, was suddenly reversed. And they did not have much confidence anymore. At this time, Jun Moxie's shocking performance had already come to an end. He stood among the huge screen of afterimages with a slight smile. After that, he took a step out. This one step was exceedingly profound. Or rather, it was extremely strange. Everyone could feel that with just that single step, he'd already separated himself from all the afterimages. In that moment, he was himself. The sky was the sky, and the afterimages were afterimages. The 3 were different entities and had nothing to do with each other. If he was in his previous world, this phenomena would be considered according to the Buddhists as becoming a Buddha on the spot. Endless nirvana. One-step rebirth. Unconfined to heaven and earth from here on. Independent of people. Independent of things. Independent of everything of the world. In the instant that Jun Moxie completed his step, the entire heavens shook. Everyone felt a loud boom, and the whole world trembled. This tremor was completely indescribable. But everyone realized at the same time that the world was the same and it hadn't moved. What moved was only their heart. That profound and queer step had stepped heavily against their hearts. The heaven and earth in their hearts had completely collapsed in the instant he stepped out. Completely collapsed. Utterly destroyed. A shrill sound rang out, and Jun Moxie's body began to dance in the air again. Each movement was exceedingly pleasant to watch, but each Saint Venerable could clearly feel that his movements all carried a hint of a kind of Tao. At the same time, a voice as crisp and sharp as a sword began to rise. The sun has set, and the moon is as before. Thousands of li of land and water are free for me to traverse. The singing voice has stopped, and I survey the world, as I invite the moon to lodge with me in the depths of the green mountains. Who shall be called heroes? It belongs only to me, suffering through untold trials and tribulations. In exchange for your affection of old, who shall be called heroes? It belongs only to me. This boiling blood exhausted and turned into dust, returning to the soil, for only a sweet glance from you. The place where I awakened from my dream was where I had come. The morning breeze blows. Which family's colors are flapping and the drums drumming? Who shall be called heroes? It belongs only to me, suffering through untold trials and tribulations, in exchange for your affection of old. This boiling blood exhausted and turned into dust, returning to the soil, for only a sweet glance from you. Who shall be called heroes? It belongs only to me. The clear singing voice resounded through the entire area, filling the sky. Jun Moxie was clearly the only person singing, but it sounded as if there were countless voices providing accompaniment to him. Everyone felt the same thing, hearing it clearly in their ears. This was a kind of music that had never appeared in this world before. Even if the crowd was unable to understand music, this moment still caused them to be completely intoxicated. As Jun Moxie sang, the strange sights of the heaven and earth became even more apparent. When he sang, "The sun has set, and the moon is as before," everyone felt that the sky had darkened, and the moon was rising up. With the second sentence, "Thousands of li of land and water are free for me to traverse," everyone could see the rivers and mountains and the endless sky above their heads passing them rapidly with the song. When he sang, "As I invite the moon to lodge with me in the depths of the green mountains," everyone felt as if all the moonlight in the sky had been gathered into Jun Moxie's grasp. This was a song about an iron-blooded but warm-hearted man's journey through the pugilistic world. It was desolate and heroic, overbearing and considerate, conceited and proud, perfectly combining the endless hardships and tenderness for his family, touching the crowd and shaking the soul. As his voice rose up, Jun Moxie's figure began to move slowly. With every movement, the countless afterimages began to disappear and merge back with his body. By the time the last sentence was finished, all the afterimages had disappeared. Jun Moxie stood proudly in the air, with his hands behind his back. His eyes were full of stubbornness from deep love, distant and illusory. With a slight raise of his sword-like brows, he smiled lightly and turned around lightly, before taking another step out. And with that step, his entire body disappeared. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1124. Sixth level of the Hongjun Pagoda. The sky above Tianfa Forest was still and quiet and the moon was gentle. A clear wind blew lightly through, rustling the leaves. The air was filled with a light mist, appearing ethereal and serene. However, everyone was sure that they had not been dreaming. Until the sun began to rise a long time later, everyone was still looking upwards dumbly in a certain direction, not moving at all. Jun Moxie breaking through in his martial Tao and his subconscious performance had given everyone here an extremely important lesson of their life. All of the people here had already attained achievements that they would never have dared to dream of in the past. But if one were to ask them right now, what was the most important event in their life, they would all definitely answer the same thing. The night at Tianfa Forest, on the day of the establishment ceremony of the evil monarch manor. This night had revealed many secrets to them and unlocked many mysteries for them. Although Jun Moxie was not their teacher and had never taught them skills, he had demonstrated the most profound knowledge and comprehension to them that night. Even Jun Moxie himself did not know, and he had only acted according to his will as he forgot himself and his surroundings. The level of respect Jun Moxie held in the lives of these people was exceedingly high, to a point where it had even reached a level of reverence. Simply because of that night, that song, that dance, that martial performance, And that epiphany. At the same time, to Jun Moxie's girls, this night had a completely different meaning. Guan Qinghan and the other girls were completely engrossed in the intoxicating song, unable to extricate themselves, suffering through untold trials and tribulations. In exchange for your affection of old, this boiling blood exhausted and turned into dust, returning to the soil, for only a sweet glance from you. Could this be that Jun Moxie, this evil monarch, was professing his love for his women before all the heroes of the world? How romantic was this? All the girls had lost themselves in the song. Even Miao Xiao Miao was incredibly touched, unable to withhold her emotions. Suffering through untold trials and tribulations, in exchange for your affection of old. Miao Xiao Miao's heart was already in turmoil when she heard that sentence. He is really willing to suffer through hardships for me? Is that really what he feels? In that moment, Jun Moxie's suave figure had already begun to merge with the image of Jun Xie in her mind. Jun Xie, is that you? Is that really you? That Jun Moxie is really you. Miao Xiao Miao clenched her little fists tightly and choked with tears in her eyes. Do you know that my heart had never wavered before? Remaining the same, it had always only been you. Most people would only hear the heroic tones in this song, but the girls only heard the deep and tender love in it. This was a man who loved beauties more than the world. This man may not be able to remain devoted to only one girl, but he wouldn't go around chasing girls. He was also an extremely dependable man who would never let his woman suffer any wrongs. In this world where men enjoyed much higher status than women, such a man was already exceedingly good. What else was there to be dissatisfied with? Which of those men who proclaimed their own righteousness all day long did not have huge harems numbering to the hundreds? As for selling off the young girls of their house like livestock for marriage, that was an extremely common occurrence. In this world, was there a second man like Jun Moxie who had power and still respected women? All the girls had many thoughts in their minds that day. At some time, Guan Qinghan came to Jun Moxie's bedroom and walked lightly behind Miao Xiao Miao. Right as she was about to say something, she realized that Miao Xiao Miao was standing dumbly out of the window, looking at the place where Jun Moxie had appeared. Her frail and small body propped against the window, and as the morning breeze flew in through the window, her sleeves fluttered lightly. Her face was slightly pale, and she looked like she would collapse at any time. However, her little fists were balled up tightly, and knuckles were even turning somewhat white because of how hard she was clenching her fists. Her eyes were only filled with reminiscence, memory, and deep emotions. Guan Qinghan smiled lightly and walked out quietly. At this point, she already understood. There weren't any need to say anything more or advise anything. This matter was already done. Everything had already been said by that silence. Another innocent girl's heart had already been cheated into the hands of that bad fellow once again, or rather, he'd already managed to cheat that girl's heart long ago. The only thing was that that girl had refused to admit it. At this moment, Jun Moxie went into the Hongjun Pagoda. On the left, the heaven-earth spirit vein was coiled up like a sleeping dragon. The tree of life bristled with life force as it radiated dazzling multicolored rays in all directions. Within a wide pool, a group of exquisite lotus was growing healthily. Each piece of lotus leaf was larger than even a regular lotus leaf. They shimmered with a faint light, like translucent gems. In the sky, a streak of beautiful, multicolored lights connected the rainbow holy tree and the exquisite lotus pool like a rainbow bridge. It seemed that endless multicolored energy was pouring towards the exquisite lotuses. And at the same time, a transparent light green energy was flowing towards the rainbow holy tree. The entire space inside the Hongjun Pagoda looked like it was something out of this world, and extremely dreamy. It was as if everything here was not real, yet existed within the realms of reality. Jun Moxie was dressed in a set of white robes as pure as snow. Standing at the entrance of the Hongjun Pagoda, he smiled lightly and looked at the scene before him silently. Only an expression of calmness and serenity could be seen on his face. Compared to the previous 5 breakthroughs, Jun Moxie was much calmer after this new accidental breakthrough. It was a peace and stillness that came from his heart, without any anxiousness. It was as if everything was held firmly in his hands, and he had everything under complete control. Until now, his heart was still in that state of emptiness, and was incomparably clear. The 6th level. The 6th level of the Hongjun Pagoda is finally open. The previous 5 levels had been filled with surprises, and this time, he believed that it would not be an exception either. There would definitely be another great surprise. The only thing was that he didn't know what kind of surprise it would be, or how big that surprise would be. Jun Moxie stood quietly for a moment as he looked warmly at the Hongjun Pagoda. Then, with a confident smile, he directly stepped inside. The moment he lifted his foot, the huge doors of the Hongjun Pagoda immediately swung open. Then, as his feet landed, his entire body disappeared into the Hongjun Pagoda. This was the truest meaning of stepping in. Jun Moxie discovered that the originally spacious hall had now been completely filled with a purple mist. This kind of mist was the purest source of spiritual qi among the heaven and earth. The purple mist shone faintly with light and was extremely soul-enchanting. The originally empty land had actually managed to birth life. There was still no expression on Jun Moxie's face, and he only looked around quietly before directly stepping onto the steps to the 2nd level. Then, he proceeded towards the 3rd level, the 4th level, and the 5th level. Finally, he came to the last step of the 5th level. With just one more step, he would be in the 6th level. As if he knew something, Jun Moxie stopped and stood still. In that instant, all the purple spiritual qi in the Hongjun Pagoda started to rumble crazily as if it was going out of control. Surging in from every direction, it began to pour into Jun Moxie's body. Jun Moxie was like a demonic fiend that was swallowing the heavens and earth. Jun Moxie's white robes rustled wildly, and the sound was as though the earth and the skies were about to fall apart. With his robes billowing, Jun Moxie raised his hands lightly, and his feet began to leave the ground. The door to the 6th level suddenly opened, and a burst of purple spiritual qi which had already condensed to a high degree rushed out and enveloped his entire body, covering every inch of him. Jun Moxie's body was completely covered in the purple qi like a cocoon, expanding slowly. Throughout the entire process, the calm steadiness in Jun Moxie's eyes had remained steadfast, never flickering even in the slightest. In the time it took to blink an eye, Jun Moxie's body had already ballooned to an extreme point. With a violent shudder, all the spiritual qi in his meridians gushed madly into his dantian, jolting heavily. Following that, it began to resume its previous peaceful state. When Jun Moxie had broken through to the 5th level of the Hongjun Pagoda previously, the layer of gray mist that had formed in his dantian remained in a passive state. At this moment, after being triggered by the purple qi, it began to rotate slowly. Although the momentum was sluggish, one could feel the inexhaustible power behind it. Following closely behind that, the tangible layer of purple spiritual qi wrapping around Jun Moxie's body once again began to surge into his meridians. Like before, it poured madly into his meridians before forcing its way into his dantian. The gray mist in his dantian continued to revolve as before, only accelerating ever so slightly. At the same time, the gray mist grew somewhat more resplendent. The same process repeated. Thrice. 4 times. 6 times. 8 times. Every time the cycle ended, the gray swirl would move faster, and its color would become brighter. Finally, after the 8th cycle, the originally gray swirl had transformed into 2 types of colors. A beautiful blue that caused others to feel extremely comfortable looking at it had separated itself from the gray, gassy matter. As for the gray, murky chi, it was now positioned under the blue chi. The distance between the two seemed to be pulling apart gradually, finally showing a clear distinction. At this time, there were only a little less than half of the purple chi that had originally been pouring madly out from the 6th level. Without a care, they funneled into Jun Moxie's meridians in an instant. Young Master Jun may have absorbed over 70% of all the purple spiritual chi thus far, but that had been done over 8 batches. Although it was somewhat painful, that was definitely still a bearable amount. But this time, he had to digest over 3 times the amount in an instant, and it was naturally difficult to handle. How would Jun Moxie not understand this much as well? His calm expression finally flickered, and his brows were knitted tightly together. A moment later, he clenched his teeth and his face turned ugly, unable to make a single sound. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1125. This is unlocking the heaven's fortune. Large amounts of chi gushed into his meridians like a powerful river breaking through bamboo. Although Jun Moxie's meridians had already been refined and strengthened countless times by now, it was still unable to endure the sudden powerful force. In just a short moment, it was already on the verge of completely tearing apart. But in the next moment, that ferocious wave of energy strangely began to flow obediently into his dantian. It was like how a rampaging dragon had charged into a wide space that it could roam as it pleased. After it entered the dantian, it remained as unbridled as before, rushing without pause into the space between the blue and gray matter. It did not change its direction at all, charging straight all the way to the extreme end. With a loud boom, the blue energy that was separated began to rise rapidly, going higher and higher. As for the gray energy, it remained unmoving at the bottom. However, its color became more and more condensed. With a sweep of his perception, Jun Moxie finally understood. Right now, a sky and earth had been formed within his dantian. The blue rose higher and higher, representing the sky. The gray was firm and condensed, representing the earth. Although this inner heaven and earth was dim and obscured, it already had a form. Far off in the sky, there was a bright star. Just a single star. Although everything still looked ethereal and hazy, but this was undoubtedly the foundations of heaven and earth. As he gazed at the incomplete patch of heaven and earth in his dantian, Jun Moxie felt a tremor travel through his heart, an indescribable feeling of emotion. Now, he actually also had the ability to create his own heaven and earth. At this time, a flash of inspiration appeared in Jun Moxie's heart. All of a sudden, he understood the true meaning of unlocking heaven's fortune. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune wasn't the most mysterious and crucial part of this mysterious cultivation technique the words unlocking heaven's fortune. When this cultivation technique was cultivated to the highest level, a person would be able to create a piece of heaven and earth in their own body. And he would be the founder of this heaven and earth. He would be the most high controller of it, opening the skies and laying down the earth, creator of all things. This was the true meaning of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Right now, Jun Moxie had only managed to create this sky and earth because of his breakthrough. It didn't have any wind, clouds, lightning, or other natural elements. There weren't any seasons, sun, moon, or constellations. There wasn't any metal, wood, water, fire, earth, humans, animals, plants, and any sort of life. Apart from a bare and plain sky and earth, there wasn't anything else. It was a state of endless bleakness. All the changes in the future would still require Jun Moxie's hard work to create. No wonder this cultivation technique was called the #1 technique. Indeed, if a cultivation technique that gave one the ability of creation was not #1, what would be? Could there be any other cultivation techniques more powerful than this? Jun Moxie smiled lightly and took a step out, formally entering the 6th level of the Hongjun Pagoda. A dense gust of purple chi blew over, displaying all kinds of illusory forms in front of him before burrowing into his sea of consciousness. In the instant that the purple chi entered his mind, a few lines of words appeared in his heart. Spirit Nirvana, 9 transformations dark chasm, heart encompassing the earth, hands supporting the sky. Mysteries of the winds and clouds are before my eyes. 9 births of the soul. The path is not hard. The mantra of the 6th layer of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Jun Moxie laughed hoarsely and shook his head. Heart encompassing the earth, hands supporting the sky, this sentence is true indeed. This earth is in my heart, and my hands are indeed capable of propping up the sky. However, what does mysteries of the winds and clouds are before my eyes mean exactly? Jun Moxie had barely started to think about it when he instantly understood the meaning of those words. Because the wind blowing in his face and the mist before him had clearly answered his question. The heart is not empty. Heaven and earth is within. Initial birth of primordial chaos. The ruler shall command wind. High heavens. Heavy earth. Creator of heaven's gate. Manipulating space with the wave of a hand. Wielding the clouds with a finger. Conducting wind and clouds as one please. The unique ability that the 6th level of the Hongjun Pagoda had gifted Jun Moxie. The ability to control the winds and clouds. From now on, Jun Moxie would be able to manipulate the flow of the winds and clouds as he wished. Jun Moxie suddenly thought of the scene in Journey to the West, when the Monkey King was having a contest with the 3 great demons tiger, deer, and sheep. The Monkey King pointed his golden staff at the skies and shouted, "Wind, come!" And a powerful gale arose. With another wave, the Monkey King roared, "Clouds, come!" And the sky was instantly filled with dense clouds. Could it be that I could also become as suave as the Monkey King? Can I really command the winds and clouds? Jun Moxie could not help but feel incredibly agitated in his heart. This was the legendary commanding the winds and clouds awe. A powerful ability that only appeared in myths. Ah! In the next moment, his entire body had appeared above Tianfa forest. Right now was the time when the sun had just risen, and the weather was clear and breezy. The sky was clear without much clouds in tens of thousand li. Cackling excitedly, Jun Moxie raised his arms in an exaggerated manner and bellowed, "Wind, come!" A loud whooshing sound rang out, and a strange energy surged through the air. The sound of wind grew loud, and all the trees and leaves in the forest began to rustle noisily. The smaller trees were even bending exaggeratedly. This wind was truly strong. Jun Moxie did not stop channeling the energy, and the wind grew stronger and stronger. Soon, the sand and stones were stirred up, covering the entire sky. Within the area of 10.000 li, the typhoon rampaged wildly. In that moment, whether it was the humans or the Xian beasts, all of them came out to gape at this strange phenomenon. Everyone was confused as to what was going on. A moment ago, the sky was completely clear with a bright sun in the sky. But now, a wild typhoon was raging through the forest. The violent winds had appeared too suddenly, and was extremely queer. In the sky, Jun Moxie waved his hands excitedly and cried out in a dramatic tone, "Clouds, come!" All of a sudden, the cloudless sky became dark as countless clouds converged towards him like an army answering to their general. In just a few breaths of time, the originally clear sky was completely packed densely with clouds, covering the entire area and preventing even a single ray of sunlight from reaching the ground. What the hell is going on? Miao Zhan furrowed his brows and exclaimed with awe. The weather situation in Tianfa Forest is a little too strange, isn't it? How could there be such violent winds out of nowhere? And a clear sky would be filled with clouds in just a few breaths of time? This transformation is too quick. This old man has lived for thousands of years. But this is the first time I've ever seen such a thing. Could it be that there's such a huge difference between the weather in the Xian continent and our misty illusory manor? But this old man had clearly toured the Xian continent before, and the weather hadn't been so strange. Miao Zhan was not the only person who was left speechless with disbelief. Everyone was staring dumbly at the sky, unable to say a single word. This sudden transformation was too extraordinary. Not to mention Miao Zhan, who was foreign to this place. Even the locals here were looking at the sky with their mouths wide open. They could be said to have spent their entire lives in Tianfa Forest, but they had never seen anything like this before as well. Brother Lu, Venerable Mei, what do you think is going on? Does your Tianfa often have this kind of irregular weather? Since Miao Zhan did not understand, Miao Dao was naturally also completely confused. Pointing at the sky with disbelief, he asked, "This wild winds and clouds are a little too strange, isn't it? Looking at the scene before us, this old man wouldn't be surprised if rain suddenly poured from those clouds, flooding the entire Tianfa forest and turning it into an ocean. This is clearly a phenomenon that happens before a major storm." Saint Emperor Lu, no, it should be called Saint Venerable Lu now, stroked his beard and also shook his head repeatedly. Brother Dao's words are highly possible. I will inform the children to make preparations immediately. Otherwise, who knows how many will be washed away by the great flood. This time, I'm afraid our Tianfa forest is going to witness a great disaster. Only, if we're talking about rain clouds, how come those clouds are all fluffy white ones? Saint Venerable Lu's face was exceedingly ugly. He was clearly very worried. And although he was talking about the white clouds not being rain clouds, he was merely trying to console himself. Although he was a Saint Venerable expert, but against the power of nature, he still would not have any abilities of resisting. He could only wait and react. Even more amazing was that the winds continued to grow bigger and bigger, and the clouds became denser and denser to the point where everyone just needed to raise their hands and they would be able to grab a piece of the clouds. But from the start to the end, there wasn't any lightning or thunder at all. Everyone was completely bamboozled and dumbfounded. This was too fecking strange. Feck. Just what is going on? Big Bear roared. his words perfectly resonating with the thoughts in everyone's hearts. His large bare eyes were glaring widely, and 2 lines of saliva hung from the corners of his mouth. Just as the wind was reaching its strongest point, and even the large trees in the forest were emanating creaking sounds, just as the clouds had clustered so densely that they threatened to smash down onto the heads of everyone, an even stranger sound rang out in the sky and the violent winds immediately stopped. Not just the wind. All the clouds dissipated like frightened rabbits being chased by ferocious eagles. With a schwa sound, they completely disappeared. The sun's rays once again fell onto the ground. The wind was light and breezy, and there weren't any clouds in 10,000 li. Tianfa forest had once again resumed its previous calm. Fek, Miao Zhan, Miao Dao and Miao Jian, these 3 revered saint venerables all cursed in tandem. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1126. Depressed power of wind and clouds. On the ground, hundreds of thousands of people and Xian beasts were looking up at the sky, waiting for the rain to start falling. But in that last moment, what happened was such a completely different result. In that moment, the sounds of jaws hitting the ground could be heard all over the place. My God! Just what is going on? What is this? Did God suddenly turn crazy? It's too weird, too scary, and too amazing. It was like a patient being told by the doctor, "There's no saving you. It's the final stage. Your life will end at any moment. You're truly finished. Nobody can save you." But in the next moment, he suddenly retracted his words, smiling warmly and saying, "I'm sorry. That was a wrong diagnosis. There's nothing wrong with you at all. You will definitely be able to live to a ripe old age." If the person did not get scared to death in the first second, he would definitely die of joy in the next few seconds. Toying with people's hearts like this. Yes, this was definitely toying with people. And this was a lunatic who was toying with hundreds of thousands of people at the same time. There was no question that this was an exceptionally grand stroke. There was no need to temporarily talk about what the people on the ground were thinking. The lunatic who had just painted that grand stroke, the young Master Jun who was still in the air, was extremely depressed at this moment. He couldn't not be depressed. Because young Master Jun discovered that the so-called controlling wind and wielding clouds only sounded amazing. In actuality, it did not have any practical use at all. Even if the wind was stronger, could it blow a saint venerable to death? Even if the clouds were thicker, could he use the clouds to crush people to death? That was an impossible matter. It was too ridiculous. Then, could it be that this power he'd obtained this time was truly so useless? If he used this stuff to frighten people, it would definitely be enough to scare people quite well. Even Miao Qingcheng, the founder of the misty illusory manor, would surely jump out of his skin with fright. However, it definitely wouldn't reach a level of scaring him to death. In fact, even a normal person might not be so scared that he would die. Young Master Jun was truly depressed this time. The Hongjun Pagoda has truly gone too far in making fun of me, right? Young Master Jun thought hatefully. It's fine if you gave me anything more practical. What's with this seemingly amazing but truthfully useless power of wind and cloud? It would have been better if you'd given me a nail clipper, at least. I could have used it to trim my nails. This is too much. Without a second thought, young Master Jun directly returned to the 6th level of the Hongjun Pagoda and searched the place thoroughly. But in the end, he could only accept the reality. Apart from using the 6th level to store some stuff, There was really nothing else in there. Looks like the only reward was this seemingly impressive but useless thing. Young Master Jun sighed heavily and sat down atop the spirit vein. He'd broken through 6 times. But this was the one where he had held the highest hopes, yet received the greatest disappointment. But as time passed, Jun Moxie's lowered head slowly lifted up and his eyes grew brighter. At this time, he'd suddenly discovered an idea and understood something. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune was closely interlinked with the Hongjun Pagoda. And there was always a relationship between the things awarded by the Hongjun Pagoda and an advancement with the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Furthermore, there were certain rules and it followed a certain order, advancing step by step. The first level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune was not considered powerful. And logically, a heaven-defying skill like the yin-yang escape art should not have appeared. However, the yin-yang escape art was still the first reward. Why? Because in order to unlock heaven's fortune, the prerequisite was that he did not die. Because once he died, everything would fall. But the yin-yang escape art would at least be able to ensure the safety of his life. And even in the worst situations, he would be able to live. As long as there was life, there would be hope. For the second level, there was the flame of primal chaos and the furnace of good fortune. This was also quite simple to understand. Raising the speed of cultivation, allowing him to cultivate much faster than other people, so that he could reach the higher levels more quickly and set down a solid foundation for the next level. At the third level, he received the power of gold and the power of wood, which was part of the power of the 5 elements. He was given 2 first to deal with, because if he had to learn 5 all at once, it would instead have an opposite effect. The fourth level contained the full power of the 5 elements. From this, it could be seen that the third level was simply a preparation for the fourth level. And the greatest use of the power of the 5 elements was not for fighting or defeating enemies. Why the power of the 5 elements? Because they were the 5 elements of heaven and earth, encompassing all things: metal, wood, water, fire, earth. All of them were closely interlinked and complement each other, growing continually. At the same time, it represented the human body's heart, liver, spleen, stomach, and kidneys. The power of the 5 elements was part of the powers of creation. With the power of the 5 elements, it meant that he also had the abilities to create a foundation for creation. As for the 5th level, he received the solution to primordial chaos. But this also could not help him to fight and defeat enemies. The so-called solution to primordial chaos held the laws and meaning of heaven and earth. And as long as he could comprehend it, it would be another step forward in unlocking the heaven's fortune. So from the 5th level, a ball of primordial chaos had appeared in his dantian. It was like a fresh field of land, waiting for him to begin work on it. And now, for the 6th level, the sky and the earth had been formed in his dantian, and he'd also obtained the power of wind and clouds. However, the powers of nature did not comprise of only wind and cloud. There were still lightning, rain, snow, thunder, frost, etc. And these were all necessary abilities needed for creation. It was also what normal people termed divine power. And so, Jun Moxie also finally understood. This 6th level was like the previous 3rd level, a foundational stage. The truly good stuff should be on the 7th level. And if Jun Moxie did not guess wrong, the 7th level would probably be giving him the rest of the powers in one go. As he thought of this, Jun Moxie could not help but be filled with anticipation. If he truly had all those powers as he had imagined, just how powerful would he become? Right now, The only thing that Jun Moxie was still unable to understand was that with the current power that the art of unlocking heaven's fortune was showing now, it was undoubtedly worthy of the title of #1 cultivation technique. But that was also only comparatively speaking. Because there weren't any immortal cultivators in this world, and Jun Moxie did not have anything to compare with. But he still felt that something was not quite right. From the looks of it, this art of unlocking heaven's fortune should be a little stronger than this. Right now, he'd already formed a sky and earth in his body. Typically, he should be on the level of a grand character even in the immortal cultivation world. But with his current strength, it was still not enough. Clearly not enough. And it wasn't just insufficient. It was still far from being enough. This was something that shouldn't be possible. Just what was going on? After thinking for a long time, he still hadn't managed to think of an answer. Directly deciding to stop thinking, Jun Moxie came out of the Hongjun Pagoda. The ground was now packed with people, all of them looking around suspiciously and whispering in low voices. Countless Xian beasts like the elephants, bears, cranes, monkeys, wolves, tigers, leopards, were all gathered in large groups. The entire area was filled with a thick stench, and the weaker Xian beasts were so scared that they were cowering on the ground. Young Master Jun rubbed his nose and instantly understood the situation. Looked like this experiment of his was still very successful. Apparently, all the humans and beasts alike had been scared. But young Master Jun did not have any interests in explaining that everything had just been an experiment. With a flash of his body, he entered the Jun residence. On the outside, everybody gathered together and discussed for a long time before finally dispersing. Avoiding everyone successfully, Jun Moxie returned directly to the room that originally belonged to him. After this breakthrough, Jun Moxie had also managed to think things through. It was better to let nature take its course. If Miao Xiao Miao still remained stubborn, it would be good to let her return to the misty illusory manor for a period of time. When she'd sorted out her thoughts, he could fetch her back again in the future. At such a crucial period, he could not afford to let himself be distracted. Besides, in certain aspects, she would be safer in the misty illusory manor than staying by his side. But the instant he stepped through the door, Jun Moxie could not help but be shocked. Miao Xiao Miao's frail body stood silently by the window. The gentle winds tugged at her clothes, and her hair fluttered softly, causing her to look exceptionally pitiful. Jun Moxie had already entered for a long time, but she hadn't moved at all. Despite her cultivation of a venerable, she was not aware of his presence, continuing to stand there rigidly, her eyes filled with endless confusion. Cough. Jun Moxie coughed lightly in an awkward manner. It wouldn't do to just stand there forever, so he had to use this method to alert her. Miao Xiao Miao's body shook, and she turned around slowly. Looking at this face that seemed both strange and familiar, her lips trembled as a red blush flushed across her face. Ultimately, she was unable to say anything. She just stood there, looking at him. Mia Xiao Miao. Jun Moxie's heart shook, and he cried out hesitantly. Miao Xiao Miao suddenly blinked, and 2 lines of tears streamed down her face. Who are you? Is it my Junyi? Yes. I am Mo Junyi. Your Junyi. Jun Moxie took a step forward and stood before her. There were very little distance between the both of them, and they could practically feel each other's breath. I am Mo Junyi and also Jun Moxie. This, I will not conceal no matter what. Jun Moxie looked deeply at her. Could it be, You really must make such a clear distinction between the two. The moment Miao Xiao Miao opened her mouth, Jun Moxie was surprised. Because from just that sentence, he could tell that Miao Xiao Miao's heart had already begun to change. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1127. The most effective method. Jun Moxie did not understand the reason for such a change. Yesterday, she was clearly still completely unable to come to terms with the situation. But now, she had clearly changed greatly. But regardless, such a change was a good thing for him. I like Jun Xie. I really like him. Although I look very highly upon him, our status is actually very close. Miao Xiao Miao's eyelashes trembled lightly as a drop of tear hung on the corner of her eye. But the evil monarch is to me much too great an existence. He's high and far out of my reach. I'm scared. Truly very scared. As compared to the unreachable evil monarch, I'm more comfortable with the Jun Xie that I know. You silly girl. Do you know how difficult it is for me to placate Xiao Yi and those other little lasses? Lofty and out of reach? Jun Moxie laughed and stretched out his arms, hugging her tightly into his arms. How about now? Are you still frightened? Actually, regardless of what kind of person the evil monarch is, or how amazing he is, you only need to know one thing. He is your man. The distance between the two of you will always be the same. Whether it is Mo Jun Xie, the evil monarch, or Jun Moxie, it's all the same. He's my man. Miao Xiao Miao shivered lightly, but did not struggle. She only repeated the words again. He's my man. And he's the man of you, silly lass. Jun Moxie smiled lightly and whispered into her ear. Don't forget that back in the misty illusory manor, you'd nearly created a huge disaster. That foot of yours nearly done me in. How scary was that? Even in recent days, I would always wake up several times in fear because of that incident. So what if I'm the evil monarch? I'm still a man at the end of the day. As long as one is a man. They would be afraid that their manhood is not there. Hearing this, Miao Xiao Miao instantly remembered that back to the time when she had been unconscious. When she had awoken, there was a man lying on top of her. Only after sending out that kick did she realize that it was that fellow. Thinking back to that time when Mo Jun Xie was running and screeching in that terrified manner, she could not help but feel her heart soften. Unable to hold back her laugh, she covered her mouth and said, "Who asked you to be so dishonest at that time?" Is that so? Jun Moxie looked intently at her. How was I dishonest at that time? Remind me, what did I do to you that was dishonest? You can't always use that as an excuse. I'm already so pitiful. Miao Xiao Miao's ears turned red, and she was suddenly unable to say anything. With Jun Moxie's intimate words now and the previous advice from Mei Shuiyan, she had pretty much accepted that Jun Moxie was Mo Jun Xie right now. However, she was embarrassed to admit it. How should she find a stage to step off of? After all, her words had indeed been a little too harsh yesterday. Hearing Jun Moxie's words now, she even forgot about the matter of finding a stage to step off of. How were you not dishonest? You were touching all over the place at that time. If you hadn't touched me like that, would I have such a great reaction? As she thought, she suddenly felt her chest turn somewhat chilly. In the next instant, a large hand had slipped in and lightly kneaded her lofty peaks. A cheeky voice rang out in her ears. How was I dishonest? Why aren't you saying anything? As he said that, his other hand had slipped under her dress, finding its way to her firm rear. As he needed her talks energetically, he chuckled. Or, was I this dishonest? Meow Xiao Meow squirmed, and her face turned completely red. Wait, don't. Why you baddie? I haven't even finished settling the scores with you. Quickly, stop. If you continue doing this, I will. I won't be polite. I'll really snip it off. Can you bear to do it? As long as you bear to do that. Please don't be courteous with me. If you want to be polite, there wouldn't be any meaning. Jun Moxie's hands did not stop as he laughed. Oh. You lass is actually still intending to settle scores with me? I haven't even begun to settle the scores with you. Your temper yesterday was truly frightening. Didn't you want to do me in to take revenge for that Jun Xie fellow? What scores are you looking to settle with me? I don't owe you anything. Meow Xiao Meow waved her hands frantically. However, she couldn't summon any strength at all. Her beautiful eyes had already become somewhat misty. You still dare to deny? You actually dared to not acknowledge me yesterday. What should we do about that crime? Jun Moxie placed his lips right beside her ear, allowing his hot breath to flow into her ears. His right hand continued grasping that white rabbit, stroking it gently at times, and chasing after it to catch it. A wife actually does not even acknowledge her husband. Meow Xiao Meow. You've indeed capable. Too promising. Today, if this young master doesn't teach you a good lesson, wouldn't you try to turn the heavens upside down tomorrow? I. Meow Xiao Meow wanted to explain herself, but her body was completely bereft of strength, and she couldn't even form a proper sentence. You still want to deny? Young Master Jun became even fiercer, refusing to let her speak. You thought that your status as the little princess of the misty illusory manor is incredible? That you can even refuse to acknowledge your own husband now? Kiki. See how this young master deals with you today. Let's see if you do me in, or if I'll do you in. I didn't. Meow Xiao Meow's body was feverishly hot, and she finally could not bear it, pleading. It's this wife that was wrong. Please, may husband please, forgive. Forgive? That is impossible. Jun Moxie's eyes were blazing with fire. See how this young master shall treat you with the hard rod today. If I don't give you a good punishment, you wouldn't know how to tell the difference between right and wrong in the future. No. Don't. Meow Xiao Meow panicked. It's broad daylight right now. We can't. Who said that one cannot teach their wife in the day? Young Master Jun laughed evilly as he pushed her onto the bed. Don't. Meow Xiao Meow struggled frantically, but how would she be able to escape? In just an instant, her clothes had vanished without a trace. Jun Moxie's eyes lit up, and he naturally also removed his own armor in an instant, only to see the beauty hugging her breasts and crawling to the corner of the bed as she pleaded. Junyi, can you change your looks? You're making me feel strange. What's strange about me? Jun Moxie cocked his head with confusion. No, it's just. I keep feeling like I'm betraying him. Meow Xiao Meow was on the verge of tears. I feel like I'm giving my pure body to two different men. Where is there two different men? Jun Moxie's heart shook and he snorted. Open your eyes wide and look at me. I am your husband. Your man. That Junyi of yours is the fake. Remember, your man is this handsome guy right here. But not only did Miao Xiao Miao not open her eyes, she instead shut them even more tightly. Jun Moxie snarled and leapt over. A soft squeal rang out. Jun Yi. Jun Yi. Call me Moxie. Jun Yi. Moxie. Moxie. Finally, the clouds and mist dissipated. This battle began extremely intensely, and the girl stubbornly refused to change her words, remaining in an uncooperative state. But the man remained strong and unyielding, not relenting in the slightest. Towards the end, a woman's stamina was naturally worse than a man's by a bit. So the victor ultimately fell to the man. Truthfully, the results of this battle had already been determined from the beginning, and the results could only be one. Under the relentless thrusting of the man, the girl ultimately began to lose herself, calling out his name madly. Towards the end, she didn't even know what she was saying anymore. Though the girl had become more cooperative, the man remained his strong posture, all the way to the end. There was no helping it. A man's stamina was greater. And this was also young Master Jun, a true beast of a man. When everything ended, the girl had already been turned into a pile of soft clay, not having the strength to lift even a single finger. Miao Xiao Miao's eyelashes fluttered, and she opened her eyes slightly. But after that, she was unable to close them again. In her heart, she'd imagined that Jun Moxie would definitely choose to let things pass quietly for some time, before trying to cultivate their feelings anew as they sought to regain that familiar feeling again. In doing so, he would try to lessen the feelings of unfamiliarity between them, and only when they slowly grew more accustomed to each other, would they begin to be able to think about doing that thing. But who would have thought that that fellow would be so anxious? She'd only just shown him a bit of hope, and he'd instantly jumped in, swallowing her before she could even react. These were clearly the methods of a hooligan. Before they could even finish a few sentences of words, he'd already taken her to bed. And the most infuriating thing was she had not felt any anger at all. In fact, it even felt rather appropriate. Awkward. This was too awkward. One had to say that that act was indeed the most forthright communication method between a man and a woman, and also the most effective. After that round of zero-distance communication, the unfamiliar feeling in Miao Xiao Miao's heart had already disappeared without a trace. A pair of large palms were still roaming gently around her body, as if they did not know exhaustion. Jun Moxie wrapped his arms around her, and his hot, masculine breath once again appeared beside her ears as he said in a low voice, "You should have managed to confirm it now, right? Are there still any feelings of unfamiliarity? We've used that position before in the past. The other things could be faked, but this can't be faked, right? Even if the position could not be considered, that thingy is the same one, right? My little Miao Miao? You are familiar with it, right?" Miao Xiao Miao shuddered, and she nearly fainted from embarrassment. Reaching out with her jade-like hands, she pinched that base fellow's waist and twisted forcefully. She'd teach that shameless fellow a lesson, and see if he could still say whatever he liked. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1128. Catching Crickets? She only realized that all the strength in her body had left her, as if even her bones had turned jelly. Not only did this pinch not hurt him, even her fingers felt injured. Jun Moxie chuckled and stood up without the slightest shame. Miao Xiao Miao instantly covered her face and turned away. Jun Moxie got off the bed and slowly put on his clothes as he chuckled evilly. This is the consequences of questioning this young master. If you still dare to defy me next time, this young master will not let you off. It is already a minor punishment for your great crime today. Miao Xiao Miao squirmed in defiance. But she felt a wave of sleepiness hit her. She really no longer had any strength to retort back. The gentle sun rays shone into the room. It was already afternoon. It seemed like the 10-hour-long invasion had truly left this beauty extremely exhausted and worn out. This scoundrel is really a beast, not knowing how to show any leniency and treasuring a girl. No, even a beast is not this tyrannical. With this her current situation, she could forget about getting off the bed for the next 2 days. In her embarrassment, Miao Xiao Miao couldn't help but feel a tinge of fear. Looks like this husband with his superior physique of a saint venerable expert is already like this. Then how could anyone else compare? Just as she mulled in her thoughts, she dozed off just like that. Not even realizing that after such an intense battle, her internal injuries did not aggravate. There was not even the slightest bit of pain, as if the injuries had already healed by themselves unknowingly to her. Forget it, as if she had fallen short of bizarre happenings for the past couple of days. Jun Moxie was still waiting for her to reply, but he wasn't expecting this lass to just fall asleep just like that. That's quick. Young Master Jun shook his head and walked out feeling relaxed from head to toe. But there was something that was troubling him. Miao Xiao Miao had the Xian female body, one of the top few types of physiques for females who cultivate. But why was it that there was absolutely nothing special? They often say that if the girl's body is too yin, and my cultivation is high too, but what happened here? I undoubtedly felt good, but I did not see that so-called surprise. Could it be that I'm not skilled enough? Or that surprise is merely a rumor? Looking at the sleeping beauty on the bed, young Master Jun stroked his chin and shook his head. It doesn't seem like my skills are inadequate. Looks like there must be some trick to this. Young Master Jun walked out feeling extremely refreshed. But he had barely walked a couple of steps when he spotted a shapely figure quietly standing at the turn, pressing her small eyes against the wall, as if she was trying to hear something. To think that there is someone eavesdropping. Looking at how focused that lass is, she must have been listening for a long time. Jun Moxie was feeling both angered and amused. With a whoosh, he appeared behind this person and grabbed her ear. What are you doing? What mischief are you up to again? This figure was none other than Miss Xiao. In the entire evil monarch manor, it seemed that aside from her, there was no other woman who would be capable of doing something like eavesdropping. Miss Dugu shrieked upon being discovered and interrogated, jumping in shock. But the next moment, she felt her entire body going weak. I'm catching crickets. He, catching crickets. Dugu Xiao squatted on the ground, her face completely red, observing and looking intently at the corner of the wall. Ha! Catching crickets? Then you will have to wait for a couple of months. Are there such things during this period? Crickets? You're really good at coming up with excuses. Dugu Xiao had a weird expression on her face, an intoxicated look in her eyes as she avoided his eyes. She kept her legs tightly squeezed together as she slowly squirmed along, as if she did not hear what Jun Moxie said. She barked out in stutters. Why you are spouting nonsense. Isn't that a cricket, cricket? I found it. Cricket, don't you run. With a whoosh, she quickly made the turn around the corner and instantly vanished. This lass might not have a high cultivation currently, but even young Master Jun was a little taken aback by her skill. Then a long sigh of relief could be heard from round the corner. Then it was the sounds of someone running away in a flustered panic. The lass and ran away. N. Cricket? Jun Moxie tilted his head and clicked his tongue. He twitched his ears, as if feeling that something was off here. Upon thinking about it, he couldn't help but mumble to himself. I only noticed today that the lass has already grown up. Watch how I go and catch the mature cricket you are tonight. Miao Zhan, Miao Dao, and Miao Jian were seated in the biggest hall of the evil monarch manor with Mo Wu Dao, Shi Ruo Chen and Huyen Ao Bo, glaring at each other. These few representatives of the strongest forces in the world had already been sitting here for a whole day. Since that strange sight at dawn had vanished, these people had gathered here, with the goal of speaking with Jun Moxie. But for some important matters, Manor Lord Jun vanished quickly. This had left all these experts waiting in discomfort. The tea was excellent tea, but even the most excellent tea was unable to withstand being boiled over and over again. This pot of tea had already been boiled for almost 50 times. It was as bland as water now. Of course, this place didn't offer that sort of high-quality treatment of ancient tea fragrance herb for its guests. And the result of this sort of hospitality was that even these top-tier experts couldn't handle it and had to go to the toilet numerous times. Even the strongest expert was still human. There was ultimately a limit to how much liquid one could hold. All the other smaller and weaker factions had bid their farewell in the morning. Since they had already achieved their goal of appearing familiar and had gained unexpected benefits, this was not a wasted trip already. But they ultimately had their own matters to attend to, and since there were no big matters, they'd have to take their leave. Besides, they had to fear every minute and second about the safety of their lives while staying here. Might as well leave earlier to get a peace of mind. Everyone let out a long sigh of relief when they left the evil monarch manor. We made it out alive. Naturally, Mo Wu Dao and the rest were more busy. Their desire to leave was even greater. But they had not accomplished their main objective for coming here. Leave? Where do we leave for? Even if evil monarch manor really chased them out, they would not leave. As to the trio of the Miao family, they had a great gain from this trip, but they had still not fully settled the matter with young Master Jun, so naturally they'd be unwilling to leave like this. Besides, the evil monarch manor was now the home of the Miao family's in-laws, so how was it not their own homes? As such, each bearing their own intentions, they just remained seated like this. In the beginning, they were still chatting away. But after several hours, Miao Zhan had already reminisced the past until the present. Everyone also had boasted of their own heroic legends, but there was still no sight of young Master Jun. As everyone was trying to look for conversations, there were plenty of loopholes after a while, giving rise to a joke. Miao Dao even interrupted Huyen Ao Bo, who was talking non-stop with great satisfaction with a deep frown. Didn't you say that back then? Your neighbor's father's elder brother's wife's son's uncle's aunt's husband's sister's father-in-law's godson's sister-in-law's sister was taken away to be a concubine by a Sky Xian expert when she was selling vegetables. Gossip is gossip. And that was all there was to gossip. And gossiping was a little disgraceful of their status. And everyone was mindful of their status. What is Jun Moxie doing? Miao Dao stood up and walked about the hall. His irritation was obvious in his tone. At a crucial timing like this, to practice for so long? The answer they had gotten from Mei Shuayan was, Moxie is practicing. Please wait. But who would have expected that Jun Moxie's practice would last from morning to sunset? It had been almost 10 hours. But everyone understood that it was common to practice for even a month when the inspiration hit sometimes. Their only worry right now was, when is this fellow going to practice until? There are only 2 months left until the war for seizing the heavens. If this fellow doesn't come out of seclusion by then it'll really be a big problem. Not mentioning anyone else who could last for this sort of duration. Perhaps this sort of stamina was enough to make 99.9999% of the men in the world to feel inferior and ashamed to the point they'd kill themselves out of frustration. Just this sort of arrogance was unprecedented. A feat that was truly unprecedented and impossible to be surpassed. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1129. Company of Two Kings. 3 Saint Venerables. And the 3 Lords of the 3 Holy Lands. The strongest and most powerful leaders in the world. All waiting here in a state of confusion, but this fellow was going at it for 10 hours. A beast, ah. An animal, ah. If someone this perverted was not a beast, then who else in the world was worthy of this glorious name of beast? The 6 men continued to look at each other and glare at each other with lack of a better choice. The evil monarch manor had made arrangements for 2 people to come and play host to keep them company, but they had barely came in for more than 5 minutes when they got thrown out by the 6 in unison. It is truly infuriating. They're being brazen. It is a simple and easy task for your evil monarch manor to find someone to keep your guests company. Jun Xie or anyone else. Which one of them doesn't have the skills and eloquence? If you let the ice block Feng Wan Yun or even that assassin Bali Luo Yun come over, it'd also be fine, ah. Even if they don't talk, they could still occupy a seat, right? Even if you don't send someone, it is also no big deal if we continue to sit here in solitude. We are able to endure it. But who allowed you to send those 2 to come and provide company? Those 2 are fit to be giving company to the guests. They're just the most disgusting and vile existences ever. These 6 great experts could not be blamed. Even with their disposition, they were completely enraged. Because the men Mei Shui Yan had sent over to keep them company. They were the 2 significant men, or rather, beasts, in the Tian Fa forest. Just their status alone was rather apt for the current situation. The brother-in-law of the evil monarch, and the status of the current beast king of Tian Fa. This was where the problem lay. It was the Tiger King and the Bear King. Earthcracker and Big Bear. The 2 most burly, crude, and doltish great beast kings of Tian Fa being sent onto the field together almost started a war with only a couple of sentences. No. More like they had already started a war. Bear King and already began to begrudge before entering the door. What is this? This king is making baby bears in the palace. Everyone should know that the Bear clan hasn't had many offspring in recent years. As the king of the bears, I should always lead by example, tiring myself out to show my people a good example, ain't it? But at such a crucial time like this, making me come out to keep this pitiful bunch company, what is Big Sis thinking? Why is it so baffling? Is she even treating me as a bear? But you can't look down on me like this. Ah. Tiger King also shook his head and said gloomily. I don't think Big Sis is that much stronger than me. She can just randomly call a few female tigers who have yet to take form to go for a tour of the Tian Fa forest. Ah, then they can just do whatever they want in there with the tigers. Everyone has their freedom, don't they? Is there a need to make such a big fuss? How busy is this king? To have to come and keep them company, this is really too degrading. That's right. That's right. No matter what. We are kings. Do you know what a king is? Kings. That is the king of the clan. Ah. What does Mo Wu Dao think he is? Just because he occupies a mountain with a bunch of people, he really thinks that he is a king? He doesn't have the word king carved on his forehead. Ah. What a braggart. Big Bear continued to exclaim begrudgingly. The sort of demeaning feeling of being forced to keep the guests company as Beast Kings left both the Bear and Tiger Kings extremely enraged but unable to refuse. Now that they were meeting the cause of their troubles, why wouldn't they vent and rant out all the resentment in their hearts? Were they not allowed to speak the truth? That's right. That's right. When Tiger King and Bear King walked in, or rather, when they had just reached the door, they had already incurred the rage of everyone. Everyone was enraged. Are these even human words? They're just out to piss everyone off in every possible way. But then again, it seemed that these two scoundrels aren't capable of saying any human words. Ah. In a fit of fury, Miao Zhan, Miao Dao, and Miao Jian gave them a thorough thrashing. 2 humans walked in, but a tiger and a bear were dragged out. The 2 who were sent here to keep the guests company were barely here for a minute. Their B*TTS did not even touch the chairs and they were instantly chased out. All the 6 people in the hall were blue in the face, but they couldn't do anything about it. The trio may seem like they had given a thorough beating, but they did not dare to use even 10% of their strength. This was still someone else's territory. The 3 lords of 3 holy lands were no better off than the 3 old men of the Miao family. The 3 fogies had at least got their chance to beat someone up. They did not even have the opportunity to vent their anger. The entire room was like a volcano that was about to erupt. When Mei Shuayan saw the pitiable state that Big Bear and Earthcracker were in, she gently nodded her head and said, "Stop pretending. Go back. Do whatever you want. There's no need to keep the guests company anymore." Tiger King and Bear King rolled on the ground and turned back into 2 bulky men, walking out while cackling. One returned to the forest to fool around. The other went back to setting an example. These 2 already had the cultivation of a 4th-level Saint Emperors after their advancement. Although they were nowhere close to the 3 elders of the Miao family, they were not that incomparable. They had only brought out the strength of a venerable to endure the beatings. Otherwise, why would they be beaten back to their original forms so easily? As to the reason why they were so pretentious was none other than the fact these 2 were sent out by Big Sis Mei to make them feel especially disgusted. When the atmosphere of the hall came to a certain point, an incredibly irritating laughter could be heard from outside. The evil monarch walked in an unhurried manner, looking extremely carefree and relaxed. With a wave of his hands, he brought along gentle winds and white clouds. Ahahaha, the weather today is really great. Ah. The sun is bright and the skies are clear. The wind is blowing gently and small raindrops fall. Jun Moxie said flightily. The 6 opened their mouths, then closed it simultaneously. They really didn't know what to say when facing this person. This was not like those 2 beasts earlier. Not only do they not dare to beat him, even if they tried, the one that would die seemed to only be themselves, and they'll be dying in vain. Manor Lord Jun. I'll get straight to the point as time is precious. Mo Wu Dao furrowed his brows. The war for seizing the heavens is impending. No matter how great the enmity between us is, it is not worth mentioning in face of a big matter like this that concerns the lives of the world. I only have a question. After that, no matter what your response is, the 3 of us will take our leave. Jun Moxie's pleased expression instantly darkened. He remained silent for a moment before slowly sitting down on the chair. Ask. The 2 of us are destined to not to exist together. One of us has to die. I believe that we are both aware and understand this. Even the world is aware of this. But this means that we do not have to behave hypocritically or pretentiously. But Mo Wu Dao took in a deep breath of air. As to the war for seizing the heavens, what does Manor Lord Jun plan to do? Mo Wu Dao raised his head and looked at Jun Moxie, not blinking for a second. Jun Moxie chuckled. He looked at Mo Wu Dao coldly. Lord Mo, I already said that I do not have any sentiments towards the lives of the world and do not feel any obligation to the safety of the continent. This has never changed. But, it cannot be helped that even though I do not care about the world and have no obligations, but I do concern myself with those who create problems and enjoy fighting. He shook his head and said helplessly, this is my nature. I cannot do anything about it. My natural temper. That is how it is, haha. A look of joy flashed across Mo Wu Dao's eyes. The next instant, Mo Wu Dao, Shi Ruo Chen, Hu Yen Ao Bo stood up in unison and gave a deep bow to Jun Moxie. They did not say a single word. Then, they straightened their backs uniformly. The look in Mo Wu Dao's eye became even more complex and intense as he said solemnly, since that is the case, in 40 days, the three of us will lead the members of the three holy lands who are involved in this battle and await for the arrival of evil monarch and your experts at the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. We shall take our leave. They cupped their hands and walked out with their head held up. Then, they could hear the soft cheers from outside the evil monarch manor. Then with the sounds of clothing flapping in the wind. Everyone from the three holy lands left. Jun Moxie remained silent, a murky look in his eyes as he gently knocked at the table with his fingertip. After a long while, he let out a sigh. You are essentially a great person, but why do you choose to undermine yourself? What he didn't know was that after Mo Wu Dao and the rest had left, as they stood on a mountain to admire the grandeur of the evil monarch manor, they couldn't help but let out a sigh of pity. You are essentially a great person, but why do you choose to undermine yourself? Both parties had the same tone of pity and regret. Is Xiao Miao better already? Miao Zhan asked testingly. Do you even need to ask? With this young master doing things personally, how can she not be better? Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. He really did not have the slightest mood to deal with these three old fogies who were waiting to watch him struggle. So he instantly ordered for them to leave. The three of you no longer have anything else, right? If there is nothing else, please return. I am very busy today, so I shan't send you off. This reply may be extremely impolite, but with young Master Jun's personality, he was already giving Miao Xiao Miao great face. The three old men glared angrily. They were about to kick up a fuss, but then they gave up and walked out grouchily, grumbling, we are Xiao Miao's elders no matter what, and by more than one generation. You have married the daughter of the Miao family, so that makes you the official son-in-law of the Miao family. How can you be this rude? This impudent? This is just. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 1130. Plan for an old friend. He couldn't come up with a good reason even after a long while. In this world where a clenched fist was the greatest argument, the strength was ultimately the most convincing bargaining chip for talking. The three old fogies nagged and grumbled for a while, but they still had to take their leave. Why? There was no why. The bunch of people who came out on this trip had been out for some time, and Jun Moxie had already killed all the members of the Zhan family. They ultimately still had to go back and clean up the mess. As to how the Zhan family will respond, that remained to be seen. But the three of time were clear that since Jun Moxie dared to kill them, then he would have his ways in dealing with the aftermath. This didn't need to be said. Everyone was clear. It may look calm and peaceful on the surface. A harmonious atmosphere everywhere. Everyone united against the same enemy. But there was still a risk of a tsunami hitting the dark anytime. With the departure of the members of the three holy lands, those from the misty illusory manor also left. It was merely those three old men. It was only when they were departing that Jun Moxie thought over it again and added, "Tell old senior Miao Qingcheng that, if, just in case, he can just endure the lightning tribulation and hurry over to Tiannan." Jun Moxie was planning ahead with this. If the Zhan family intended to rain disaster, and Zhan Luanhui had already recovered his original strength, then aside from Miao Qingcheng, there was really no one else in the entire misty illusory manor who would be able to suppress him. But Miao Qingcheng's appearance would entail lightning tribulations. Jun Moxie was planning just in case. Tiannan, that had been in celebrations for 2 days, finally returned back to its original peaceful state. Aside from Tang Yuan and Li Yuran and a few others remained. The rest, like the Dongfang family, Duanmu family, Xikong family, and Blizzard Silver City had returned. These 4 families also made the decision. If evil Monarch Manor is partaking in the war for seizing the heavens, then their family would also go. Even if we are not going on the battlefield, we can go there and give our support. As long as they have the opportunity to experience the atmosphere, it will undoubtedly be a significant benefit for the future growth of the family. When Tang Yuan entered the hall, he essentially squeezed his way in. Hee hee. Third young master. Hee hee. I have really missed you so much. Feck. Jun Moxie yelped weirdly, smacking his forehead and rolling his eyes. Tang Yuan, did you eat April fat? How many days had it barely been? To think that you've set a new highest record. The April fat he spoke of was the pig feed for making pigs grow back on Earth. So Tang Yuan naturally wouldn't know about it. He smacked his belly and said innocently, "Third young master. This, you can't blame me, ah." Ha! Can't blame you? Am I supposed to blame myself then? Jun Moxie sighed helplessly. He really had no idea what to do with this fellow. Tang Yuan, don't head back yet. Since you're here this time, I'll help you lose some weight. Jun Moxie sighed sincerely. I am really worried. If you continue like this, you'll really die all of a sudden someday. I'm not trying to scare you with my words, but your current size is really too much. They say that there are 10,000s of ways for people to die, with all sorts of odd and various ways. But if you really die from being too fat, then it'll really not sound good. If you really die from being too fat, I'll be sad. But I will still understand. If someday, you get mistaken for a pig by someone when walking in the streets and get dragged off into the slaughterhouse, that'll really be a tragedy. Who would have thought that it is not a pig when it is this size? Ah. Then, even if I wish to stand up for you, I also don't even have the face. Ah. My words may sound unpleasant, but the logic is there. You just reassured and hand the meat on your body to me. Tang Yuan shivered and said trepidatiously, Third young master. We are brothers. There is no problem staying for a few more days. Even if you don't want me to let me stay, I'm still going to stay for a couple of days. But, we can skip the losing weight cue. I am just a little fat. It shouldn't be that serious. The feeling from that time. It is impossible to forget. Ah. Let's avoid this trouble. N. Avoid this trouble? That is impossible. I am being responsible for the life of my brother. Ah. Don't worry. This time, your body will definitely return back to the standards of a normal person, and you shouldn't become fat afterwards. Because I am confident that as long as you are thinking of being a glutton or do not wish to train, you will definitely recall the treatment this time. I also believe that the treatment I am personally handling this time will be extremely memorable for you in all of your lives. Jun Moxie scoffed and wriggled his brows. Tang Yuan shrank back in fear, a look of terror his eyes. He was so close to falling onto the bum. Tang Yuan would rather die than go through the tortuous process of weight loss again. He had already made up his mind on this. And now that Jun Moxie was saying that it would be even more rigorous this time, Tang Yuan's heart trembled in fear and was on the verge of passing out. No way. Dear heavens, ah. There's no need to toy with me like this, ah. Brother. The exhaustion this time is inevitable. But I am doing it for your own good. Let's not even talk about the danger to your life. You tell me. You're so fat now. Then the matter between husband and wife, how do you do it? Jun Moxie said. Do you know that Sun Xiao Mei, it is very tiring for her? Tang Yuan's face instantly turned red and began to avoid eye contact. After a long while, he mumbled, Third young master. I also don't wish to. Every time. Before I could, then I'd already. My body is fat. But that area has really weakened drastically. I used to be quite impressive before. Don't worry. Leave it all to me. As long as you listen and lose all this meat, I assure you that you shall exhibit your manly might and make your wife silly. Jun Moxie beat his chest and said. The moment that matter was involved, any sort of hard work was no big deal to a man. Even if they had to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of flames. So what? As long as they could show their masculinity and vigor before their lover, any sort of suffering was worth it. With this thought, accepting this weight loss process didn't seem as unacceptable to Tang Yuan anymore. With nothing to do, Jun Moxie made preparations to concoct some pills again. This time, not only did he want to increase the strength of his subordinates, he wanted to create an assassin troupe that had his style. Let Bailey Luo Yun and Leng Ao lead this assassin squad to become the real #1 hidden sword in the world. At the same time, he wanted Tian, Can and DK to go through a complete change. To the point that when they strike, the heavens will be crippled, and the earth will become flawed. And another thing was, Jun Moxie had specially made a slimming spill for Tang Yuan. This was a solution that Jun Moxie had thought of after wrecking his brains and reading up on countless information. Otherwise, watching the rate Tang Yuan was growing in size, young Master Jun's words earlier were really not for scaring Tang Yuan. Tang Yuan absolutely has the chance of dying from being too fat. This was undoubtedly a case of obesity and it was extremely severe. Jun Moxie was very clear about this sickness. It was no longer a problem that could be resolved with dieting and exercising. Even if Tang Yuan only ate grass daily and did all sorts of work like a donkey, he would still be able to grow fat. This was ultimately due to a problem in the physique and blood or genes. Jun Moxie was an assassin and not a specialist, so he was unable to tell the specifics. But young Master Jun was trying to concoct a pill. And that pill's effects was to make all the fat in Tang Yuan completely burn off within a short period of time. He could only treat the symptoms after he treated the root cause. As long as he got rid of all that fats on the body, everything else will be much easier. And at least, Tang Yuan would not be at a risk of dying any moment. Of course, this was still at its fumbling stages, and there needed to be someone to test it on. Of course, this person would be Tang Yuan. This was something that was made specially for him. If he isn't the lab rat, who else could be? Besides, no one else seemed to have any use for this pill aside from Tang Yuan. although the process would definitely be painful and uncomfortable. But with young Master Jun around, he will definitely not die. Tang Yuan may have made up his mind to give it a try due to the matter concerning his pride as a man, but the fear was still inevitable. He pulled a long face and got ready to go prepare himself. The entire journey he only felt jittery. An ominous feeling accompanying the sinister smile of Jun Moxie filled his mind. If not for his absolute trust in young Master Jun, that he would definitely not bring harm upon him, Tang Yuan was practically scared witless and on the verge of escaping overnight. With his mind preoccupied, he walked a distance before stomping his feet. God dang it! I am just 300 kilogram. Do whatever you want. As long as I can revive my manliness. So what if I have to suffer a bit? Tang Yuan bad barely left a while when young Master Li Yuran slowly walked in. Third young master. Your achievements today have truly left me greatly astonished. Ah. Li Yuran had a slight smile on his face, his graceful bearing standing out. But he knew himself that Jun Moxie's current achievements were not only astonishing. He wouldn't even dream about it. That Jun Moxie that was secretly battling himself in wits and guts back then in Tianxiang City had already risen into the clouds that he could not even see. If the two of them still had any disputes, young Master Jun didn't even have to do anything. He could easily blow him to death with a single breath. When faced with this sort of jarring disparity, he couldn't even bring up the smallest bit of jealousy. He could only say, "A demon. Ah." Li Yuran. Young Master Li, why do your words sound a little sour? That is very unlike you. Ah. Why? Are you envious? Jun Moxie chuckled amusingly. It is because the disparity between us is too far, too great, that I dare to speak of what I think. The divine dragons that flies in the skies will never mind the look from an ant. How can I be only envious? Ah. Li Yuran let out a long sigh and sat down. That was well said. I love to hear that. We are all familiar with each other. There is no need to sound so distant. If you wish for it, I can help you. Jun Moxie said seriously. You may not necessarily be unable to do it. The evil monarch manor right now was lacking in talents in management, especially a scheming strategist like Li Yuran. So Jun Moxie had long been pondering over whether to put in some effort to pull this fellow out from his greed and make use of him. This story will be continued to chapter 1131. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.